Hello and welcome to Shaw's Creative Stamping. I'm Tony Shaw and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Sayre, Pennsylvania. I would like to welcome you today to another video. Today I'd like to feature two different cards using the Happy Hedgehog bundle, which is a photopolymer set with its punch, the Build-A-Hedgehog punch, and also the split card texture dies, and we're going to do a card featuring each of these two dies. One we're going to do a portrait style and the other one we're going to do a landscape style. So in front of me I have all of our supplies that we're going to be using today. We're going to be featuring soft suede and crumb cake as our cardstocks. We're going to use some scrap white and some white for our inserts, featuring the designer paper of Fancy Flora. And we're also going to feature from the burlap ribbon and real red combo pack, the burlap ribbon. So I'm going to move these aside so we can get started. And the first thing we'll do is we've got our card base, and I'm going to move them aside because I have two of them here, one for each card. Both card bases are going to start off the same. They're going to be 8.5 by 5.5, and we're going to score down the center at 4.25. So we'll take that and fold it and burnish it with the bone folder. Makes it sit nice and flat. And I'm going to do the first one landscape style. So the next thing that we're going to need is we're going to take a piece of crumb cake, which is a 4 by 5.25 piece of cardstock, and we're going to die cut it to get our layer that we need. And I already, by using the stamp set, I use Finding a Friend is the best way, the best discovery of all. And I also used the cute little butterfly from there to decorate the front. And I just took a piece of the Fancy Floral designer paper, and this is 4 by 5.25 is the layer of the cardstock. So I made this piece just a smidgen smaller. So this is actually 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Okay, and I'm just going to use our stamping seal and put that down on the bottom of the cardstock, picture framing it all the way around. And then I'm going to take the die cut piece of cardstock and I'm going to use the stamping seal, making sure that we can get these edges. And I'm actually going to use a little bit of glue for these edges where all the die cut is. So I'm just going to do a small little bead of glue so it doesn't make too much of a mess. And you can do just a little dot on some of these inside pieces. Sometimes people like to use a glue dot, but that would pop it up just a smidgen. And I'm going to layer that right on top of the designer paper. Okay. Then I like to put a little bit of a decoration on the front here where it's empty, and this is where I took a 3.5 piece of ribbon, and then I just just kind of did a slant cut on the edge there, and I'm going to just put a little bit of tape down on the card itself, and I'm going to line up the ribbon right at the edge. And then I stamped our little hedgehog on a piece of scrap basic white cardstock, and using our punch, I punched him out, and because I wanted a little bit of dimension, I stuck a couple of dimensionals on the back so we can pop him up, and stuck him right on the edge of the little burlap ribbon. Then to do the inside, I took a insert piece of 4 by 5.25 and a little piece of designer paper that's 3/4 inch by 5.5. And basically what I wanted to do was trim it up so that I didn't want to cut it too short, so I'm going to actually line it up here, and then I'm going to take my scissor and just snip off the extra. We just flip it over to the back so you can cut off that little extra piece, and then it goes from end to end. And taking your Stampin' Seal, we'll put that insert right in the center of the card here. Now, of course, what's a card without bling? And so I am using today the Enamel Dots Essentials. It comes in the navy blue, crumb cake, and white. And I'm going to use the crumb cake. And with the Take Your Pick tool, I'm going to pick out a couple and just kind of fill in some of those little dots. So I'm going to take some of these and just kind of pop them in into some of these little places here. And usually when you add your bling, you like to add an odd number. 3 is always a good one, but on this card, because it's so big with all these little dots, I wanted to add a few extra. So I'm going to add 5 on this card. And I'm going to stick one right over by our little butterfly. So now we have our first card, which has our little hedgehog on the front with our burlap ribbon, some stamping, our textile split card die, and then inside bringing a little bit of the designer paper inside. The second card is going to be a portrait style card, and I started off the same with the 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And taking your bone folder, just kind of burnish that down. And this one's portrait style. Again, I took, which was actually the back side, or really the front side of the fancy floral designer paper. And again, cut it just smaller than the layer. So it's 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. And again, with the Stampin' Seal, I'm going to stick that right in the front center of the card, and through the split layer where I again stamped the same butterfly and the same sentiment, only this time I used the other decorative edge. I'm going to do some Stampin' Seal, and I'm going to use a little bit of our glue. And that'll help keep that edge down. And layering it over the top, we have the beautiful flowers from that fancy floral paper coming through. This time, I wanted to do a little bit something different with our ribbon. So instead of taking a 3.5-inch piece, this time I'm going to actually wrap the card. So I'm going to open it up and place the ribbon inside, nice and flat, and come across here and just tie it in a knot. I love to tie these in a knot. This is such a nice ribbon. It lays nice, it ties nice, and just a nice little flat piece here. I'll just scoot that over just a smidgen. Now we'll trim off these edges because they're a little bit too long. And just to put it in place so it doesn't wiggle all over the place, we'll take some glue dots, and we'll just grab one glue dot with our Take Your Pick tool, and I'm just going to stick it right under the knot so I can hold it in place where I want it. And again, we'll take our essential dots, and we'll add a couple of them to the front of the card. And we'll just do 3 this time, putting them up by the butterfly, and one down a little bit lower. And again, because I like to bring a little bit of the outside of the card inside, I have another white insert, which is 4 by 5 1/4. Took another 3/4 inch strip of the designer paper, and I'm going to put that right down the side here. that up. And again, take my scissors and snip that off. And a little bit of our Stampin' seal. And we'll place that in the center so you can do some writing. So we have the inside of the portrait style card, the outside of the portrait style card. We have the inside of the landscape style card with the landscape style card. It's kind of hard to see here in the screen, but you get the idea. And I hope you enjoyed our little hedgehog and our fancy floral designer paper and using the crumb cake and soft suede cardstock. Hope you have an enjoyable day. Thanks for joining us.